Hi everyone, before you lead others, you must first decide who you are, because leadership isn't a job title, it's a commitment. It's a choice to show up with strength, with humility, and with the fierce courage to serve even when it's uncomfortable. If you've ever felt like leadership was out of reach, or that you're not born to lead, this video is going to flip that belief on its head. You don't need to be the loudest in the room to be the strongest. You don't need to have all the answers to be the guide. Real leadership is built, molded, and refined every single day. In this video, we'll uncover the truth most people overlook, that great leaders aren't born, they're made. Through pain, through patience, through service, you'll learn how leadership is not about control, but about courage, not about commanding, but about connecting, not about being perfect, but about being present. You'll discover the powerful habits, the subtle shifts, and the mindset breakthroughs that separate those who demand respect from those who inspire it. If you've ever wanted to become the kind of person others trust, follow, and remember long after the meeting ends, stay with me. Because this is more than a motivational speech. It's a wake-up call, a call to rise, to grow, and to become the leader you were meant to be. Not someday, but starting now. Let's begin. Leadership is not a title. It's not the corner office, the badge of honor, or the applause at the company meeting. Leadership is a responsibility, often invisible, often heavy, and always rooted in service. When people chase leadership as a position of privilege, they misunderstand its true nature. Because real leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. It's not about the number of followers you have. It's about how many lives you lift. Anyone can call themselves a leader, but only those who carry the weight of others with integrity, clarity, and humility actually become one. The misconception that leadership is granted by title is dangerous. It gives a false sense of arrival. A manager may have authority, but authority doesn't guarantee respect. A CEO might have power, but power doesn't ensure loyalty. Leadership is earned in the trenches, by showing up when it's hard, by standing up for your team when no one else will, and by speaking the truth even when your voice shakes. People don't remember what you claim to be. They remember how you made them feel, how you fought for their growth, and how you carried the burdens no one else saw. It begins in the small things, listening more than speaking, taking responsibility when the outcome fails, sharing credit when the result succeeds, being the first to apologize, being the last to give up. These aren't grand gestures, but they are leadership. Real leadership shows up in moments of pressure, uncertainty, and fear. It's in those moments where people look around for guidance, for reassurance, and for courage. And if you've been consistent, they look to you. Not because your job title told them to, but because your actions convinced them they could. You don't get leadership by demanding it. You earn it by practicing it. You earn it by sacrificing, by modeling the behaviors you want to see, and by placing the well-being of others above your personal comfort. The responsibility of leadership is not to look important, but to be dependable. Not to dominate, but to serve. Not to command, but to inspire. In the end, leadership is not a crown you wear, but a weight you carry. And if you carry it well, you won't need to tell people you're a leader. They'll already know leadership is not born from charisma or dominance. It is born from self-awareness and the willingness to grow. The myth that some people are just natural leaders undermines the truth that leadership is a learned skill, a discipline that demands consistent introspection and refinement. At its core, self-awareness is the beginning of all leadership, because you cannot effectively lead others if you cannot first understand yourself. The greatest leaders are not the ones who know all the answers. They are the ones who are humble enough to admit they don't, and wise enough to ask the right questions. Too often, people chase the performance of leadership, trying to look confident, speak with authority, or project certainty. But these are surface-level actions that crumble when faced with real challenge. Without self-awareness, a leader risks becoming reactive, defensive, or disconnected. But with it, they become anchored. They respond instead of react. They listen instead of lecture, and they grow instead of plateau. Self-awareness helps a leader understand their strengths without arrogance, their weaknesses without shame, and their blind spots without ego. It gives them clarity, and clarity creates trust. It's easy to assume that knowing yourself is automatic, but real self-awareness requires courage. It means confronting your insecurities, owning your mistakes, questioning your assumptions, and being open to feedback that stings. It's uncomfortable work, and that's why so many avoid it. But great leaders know that discomfort is where growth begins. When a leader is aware of how they impact others, how they communicate, how they manage stress, and how they are perceived, they can adjust. They can lead with empathy instead of ego, with purpose instead of pride, and with conviction instead of control. This kind of self-awareness is not a one-time reflection. It's a daily practice. It's journaling after hard conversations. It's listening more than talking in meetings. It's pausing before reacting. It's seeking feedback from those you lead and being willing to receive it without defensiveness. These small habits accumulate, and over time, they shape a leader who is not only effective but deeply respected. Leadership starts inside. It's not about gaining control over others. It's about mastering the person you see in the mirror, and the more deeply you know yourself, the more clearly you can see others. That clarity is where true leadership begins. One of the most overlooked truths about leadership is that trust isn't given. It's earned, and it's earned over time through consistency. People don't follow titles, they follow behavior. And when that behavior is inconsistent, unpredictable, or self-serving, trust is broken before it ever has the chance to take root. A leader who shows up one way on a good day and entirely different on a bad one is not dependable. They are unstable. And instability in leadership does not inspire loyalty. It creates doubt, fear, and disengagement. Trust is built in the small moments, in the patterns that people begin to notice. It's built when you keep your word even when it's inconvenient. It's built when you listen to understand instead of listening to reply. It's built when you take responsibility instead of passing blame. These are not grand gestures, they are habits. Habits that, over time, create a foundation so solid that people will follow you not because they have to, but because they want to. Consistency doesn't mean being perfect. It means being reliable. It means showing up with integrity even when no one is watching. It means modeling the values you preach, especially when it's hard. When people know who they're getting every time you walk into the room, they feel safe, and safety is the soil in which trust grows. A leader who is emotionally erratic, constantly shifting priorities, or making decisions based on personal convenience rather than shared values will never foster trust. They may get compliance, but never commitment. Leadership is not about inspiring people once with a powerful speech. It's about showing up every day in a way that reinforces your principles. It's about being the kind of person others know they can count on, not just when everything is going well, but when everything is falling apart. That's when your consistency matters most. When storms hit, people don't look for the loudest voice. They look for the steadiest presence. You can't fake consistency. People are perceptive. They notice what you reward, what you tolerate, what you ignore, and what you emphasize. They pay attention to whether your words match your actions. If there's a gap, trust erodes. But if you are consistent, if your actions align with your values, if your decisions reflect integrity, not popularity, then you become a leader worth following. Not just during easy times, but in times of uncertainty. Trust built on consistency doesn't just last, it multiplies. It spreads across teams, cultures, and communities. Because consistency isn't just a leadership strategy. It's a leadership legacy. The ability to receive feedback without defensiveness is one of the most powerful markers of a true leader. It's not just about hearing words. It's about truly listening, absorbing, and being willing to grow, even when the truth is uncomfortable. Feedback, especially when it challenges your identity or performance, feels personal. But the greatest leaders have learned to separate their ego from their purpose. They understand that growth never happens in comfort, and criticism, when filtered through a lens of maturity, becomes a tool for transformation, not a threat to pride. When leaders are unwilling to accept feedback, they send a message that they are finished products, beyond correction, immune to evolution. But no one follows someone who refuses to grow. People respect leaders who are courageous enough to say, "I didn't get that right," or "Thank you for pointing that out." Vulnerability doesn't make a leader weak. It makes them relatable, trustworthy, and approachable. It opens the door for honesty in the organization. It gives others permission to learn out loud rather than pretend they have all the answers. Feedback is a mirror, and sometimes it shows us parts of ourselves we'd rather not see. But leaders don't break the mirror. They study it, they ask questions, they seek context, they reflect. Not every piece of feedback is valid, but every piece of feedback is an opportunity to ask deeper questions about how you're showing up and what kind of impact you're having. The leaders who grow the fastest are the ones who invite feedback before it's offered. They don't wait for a crisis to seek clarity. They ask, "How did I come across?" Or "Is there anything I could have done differently?" That kind of curiosity accelerates trust. Refusing feedback is the equivalent of closing your eyes while driving. You might still be moving forward, but you're doing it blindly. Eventually, you'll crash. Leaders who embrace feedback don't just improve their skills, they deepen their influence, because people feel seen, heard, and valued in an environment where feedback is normalized and not weaponized. They don't fear making mistakes, they fear stagnation, and that creates a culture of learning, of constant elevation, of excellence without arrogance. Feedback is not a flaw in the system, it is the system. It is the invisible fuel that transforms good intentions into better execution. And leaders who develop the emotional discipline to accept feedback with humility, apply it with urgency, and respond with gratitude will always rise above those who lead with ego. Because feedback, in the hands of a wise leader, becomes the sharpest tool for growth, impact, and lasting legacy. True leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking better questions. This shift in mindset is what separates those who manage tasks from those who inspire people. In a world that moves faster every day, leaders who cling to certainty fall behind. They create organizations that stagnate, cultures that suppress creativity, and teams that stop thinking for themselves. But leaders who ask better questions cultivate curiosity. They create room for exploration. They ignite potential in the people around them because they refuse to settle for surface-level thinking. When a leader asks questions like, "What do you think?" or "How would you approach this differently?" they're not just collecting ideas, they're signaling trust. They're empowering their team to think independently, to step into ownership, and to engage in the problem rather than waiting to be told what to do. This practice builds resilience in an organization. It decentralizes leadership in the healthiest way. By creating more leaders at every level, people feel like their voice matters. They don't just show up to fulfill a job description. They show up to shape something meaningful. The power of a question lies not in its complexity, but in its intention. A simple question, asked with genuine curiosity, can shift the direction of a conversation, a project, even a company. When a leader stops trying to be the smartest person in the room and starts seeking the smartest ideas in the room, magic happens. Innovation takes root. People start thinking deeper, speaking bolder, contributing more. They no longer fear judgment because they've been invited into a dialogue, not a performance. Leaders who ask better questions also lead themselves better. They pause in moments of stress and ask, "What am I not seeing?" They reflect during conflict and ask, "What part of this do I own?" They evaluate decisions by asking, "Does this align with who we are and where we're going?" This kind of self-questioning isn't a weakness, it's a strength. It shows a leader is not just focused on results, but on integrity, alignment, and growth. Most importantly, questions create clarity, and clarity is the foundation of momentum. When people know why they're doing what they're doing, and when that why has been shaped by collaborative inquiry, they move with more conviction. They take more ownership, they adapt faster, they innovate more freely, because they've been part of the process, not just recipients of a decision. Asking better questions is how leaders build better teams. It's how they uncover better solutions. It's how they lead with humility and courage in a world that's constantly changing. Great leaders aren't remembered for how loudly they spoke. They're remembered for how deeply they listened and how intentionally they asked. Because in the end, it's not about having the last word. It's about creating the space where others can speak their best ones. Great leaders are not born knowing how to serve others. They learn how. They learn to shift the spotlight away from themselves and toward the people they lead. Serving others isn't weakness. It's the most powerful act a leader can perform. Because when people feel seen, heard, and valued, they perform at levels that exceed what's expected. They begin to care not just about the outcome, but about the mission. And they follow leaders not because they have to, but because they want to. Service in leadership doesn't mean doing everything for everyone. It means removing obstacles. It means creating environments where people can thrive. It means protecting the culture so the values don't get diluted in the rush for results. Leaders who serve their people invest in their growth, not just their productivity. They recognize that people aren't just workers. They are the soul of the organization. They ask what their team needs to succeed, and then they act on it. Sometimes it's resources, sometimes it's feedback, sometimes it's simply the freedom to fail safely. Serving others also means holding people accountable. Because accountability is a form of respect. When a leader challenges someone to rise to their potential, it says, "I believe in you." Avoiding hard conversations is never an act of service. It's a form of self-preservation. Real service requires courage. The courage to speak the truth in love, to have the conversation that moves someone forward, to confront dysfunction before it spreads. The most powerful leaders serve not from above, but from beside. They walk with their teams through the grind. They lead by example. They make sacrifices when necessary. They admit when they're wrong. That humility builds trust, and trust is what makes people loyal. It's what makes people speak up in meetings, take risks, challenge ideas, and innovate without fear, because they know their leader isn't competing with them. They're fighting for them. When leaders lead to serve, their organizations become stronger from the inside out. Teams become more resilient. People collaborate more authentically. Silos break down, egos shrink, and what emerges is a community driven by purpose, not pressure, a mission fueled by unity, not hierarchy, a culture where leadership is not about having power over others, but responsibility for them. The measure of a great leader is never how many people follow them. It's how many people they lift, how many they empower, how many they help become leaders themselves, and that legacy begins not with a strategy or a title, but with the decision to serve every day, in every meeting, through every challenge. Because when a leader commits to serving others, they don't just build a team. They build a future worth following. Leadership isn't about having the loudest voice or the highest title. It's about taking responsibility for the people around you. It's about showing up consistently with empathy, clarity, and conviction. What we've uncovered in this speech is a simple but often forgotten truth. Leadership has to be learned. It is not instinctive. It's a discipline that demands self-awareness, practice, humility, and an unwavering commitment to serve others before yourself. Every great leader you admire started where you are now, with uncertainty, fear, and questions. But what set them apart is that they chose to grow. They chose to listen. They chose to lead not from pride, but from purpose. So whether you're leading a team, guiding a family, building a community, or simply trying to lead yourself, remember, every act of leadership begins with a choice. The choice to care, the choice to learn, the choice to rise again even when it's hard. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait to feel ready, because the world doesn't need perfect leaders. It needs brave ones. And bravery begins with the first step. Take it. Thank you for sharing your time, your energy, and your attention. If this message sparked something within you, I invite you to keep the conversation going. Like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, lead forward, because the world is waiting for your voice. Let's grow into leaders the world can trust.